Okay, hi everyone. So, good evening. I'm Karashma from the Tech Container team. Thanks a lot for joining us today. We've collaborated with the MobiTalk team for this event. So, to give you a little bit of context about Tech Container, we've been using this platform to share knowledge on upcoming trends. So, we've been hosting sessions on various emerging technologies every month. This is our 14th meetup and our second virtual meetup. So now for the session plan for the day, we have two speakers, Indranil and Nitish. Indranil is a staff engineer at Navis and has more than 10 years of experience in software development. He's worked on microservices, cloud solutions design and development. And Nitish has been working as a software developer in Navis for almost a year now. His primary focus has been on developing cross-platform mobile applications using React Native and has also worked with JavaScript, TypeScript, and ESX. Now I'll hand it over to Harish from the MobiTalk team.
Thank you, Karishma. Uh, Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining MobiTalk's first ever online meetup. Let's welcome both the speakers, Indranil and Nitesh, who are here to talk about implementing continuous integration and continuous delivery from scratch using Bitrise.io cloud build platform. Before getting started, I would like to take a moment to share a few details. MobiTalk is a meetup focused on mobile developers where we organize talks on topics from mobile such as Android and iOS development every month. MobiTalk is actively looking for speakers. So you, your friends, or your colleagues, whoever is interested to talk on any topic related to mobile app development, be it iOS or Android, can reach out to any of the MobiTalk organizers on LinkedIn. At MobiTalk, we are trying to build a community among mobile app developers, and we have a WhatsApp group for the attendees to network after the event. So I'll be sharing the WhatsApp group link in this meeting chat. Those who are interested can feel free to join the group. So without any further delay, let's jump into today's session. I'm handing it over to Nitesh and Indrani. You can take it first.
Indranil, we're not able to hear you in case you're talking.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Okay. Uh, Hello, everyone. Welcome to another installment of Tech Container. Today, we will be focusing on DevOps, particularly mobile DevOps, covering the aspects of why to do it and obviously, more importantly, how to do it, right? So before we dive deep into the topic, let's try to understand the current landscape of mobile applications and why is mobile different, right? So see, when it comes to mobile applications, speed is everything. There are multiple indicators to suggest a strong correlation between the frequency of updates and the success of an app. So agility is very, very important. Next is the ever-changing landscape of the tool set that we use for mobile development, whether it's the delivery part or even the monitoring part. And this is where automation plays a big, big role. In fact, automation is a cornerstone of DevOps. We will discuss automation more down the presentation. But uh, last, uh, last but not the least, mobile apps are generally targeted for a large number of devices and platforms, which means features unexpectedly breaking on this fragmented landscape that we need to support is not uncommon. All these factors clearly indicates that mobile is different, and hence the DevOps related to it also requires an approach that differs from traditional DevOps methods. So in a very simplistic and literal way, DevOps is defined as a set of practices that combines software development and IT operations with the aim to shorten the overall release cycle of high quality software. But then this definition is overtly simplistic. Mobile DevOps helps to create a cultural organizational change by addressing the gap between the teams, focus on effective cross-functional collaboration between project managers, product owners, developers, QA, UI UX design throughout the development and delivery lifecycle. Now, when you look at the goals on the presentation in the bullet points, you may realize that they're very same as the normal DevOps goals, right? Where customer satisfaction is of top priority. Similarly, sustainability of products and processes, enhanced teamwork, of which we talked about the cultural and organizational change, and finally, rapid or fast or shortened development and delivery life cycles. So if we examine these goals clearly, their relationships and how they influence each other, the infinite loop of DevOps that we all have come to know, right, starts to make sense. Ideate, build, test, shape, monitor, measure, ideate, build, test, and it goes on, right? So before we move on, one more thing I wanted to talk about, a common misconception that DevOps is CI/CD and CI/CD is DevOps. Well, CI/CD definitely helps DevOps in achieving the goals, and they are inseparable. But DevOps, when we talk about DevOps and what we have talked till now, it is more like a mindset or a cultural change in the team or organization. Like, for example, a mindset to do more automation, automating as much as possible throughout the entire life cycle of app development, planning, code testing, deployment, monitoring, right? Develop a mindset to eliminate repetitive and tedious manual processes, right? Focusing on seamless merging of codes in source control to reduce conflicts and errors. These things can only be achieved by aligning to DevOps mindset. I mean, no amount of cutting edge CI/CD will help it if we are not aligned to this particular mindset. Right. So now, having said all about the mindset and what exactly DevOps should mean, let's enter into the domain of implementation. So the big question on how to do mobile DevOps in the right way, which suits the organization. See, I did not use the word team here, but organization. And the reason for that is the longer run benefits of having a unified organizational DevOps approach outweighs every team having its own. And this is like both culturally and economically, right? So, okay, enough of the philosophy. Let's talk about how we did it in our organization, Navis, right? So first, you need to build a consensus that there is a need for DevOps. Every team member needs to be aligned to this mindset. Doing multiple demos and presenting to key decision makers can go a long way in actually achieving it. Once we have it, you can start scouting several options like we did. We checked if we can do an in-house setup for the CI/CD pipeline that we wanted to have. We looked into some well-known hosted solutions like Bitrise.io, Visual Studio, App Center. We looked into Browser Stack, ShotLab, AWS Device Firm. But the third point went out of the window because we understood that they do not actually provide the entire stack, and there is a lot of integration efforts that needs to be there to actually use them. For the in-house part, right, we already had Jenkins on AWS. We started with the Android setup, but AWS does not have any Mac support, so iOS development went out of the window. with Android also, we wanted to write a lot of APM automation tests, but the emulator support on AWS is not there because you can only run AMD emulators, and they are very, very slow. So that's why we gave up on the in-house setup. So basically, we were looking into two options. One is the Visual Studio App Center and the Bitrise IO. I remember those who know, Parani helped us to kind of get some reviews from some DevOps guy from ThoughtWorks. They gave us very good reviews about Bitrise.io, and we started exploring it and kind of ended up loving it, right? So Bitrise is a CI/CD platform as a service. Go to bitrise.io and check out their pricing. They give a 14-day trial account too, so you can check out the internals. It's pretty awesome. Lots of pre-built steps, VPN supports, and a lot of things that we thought we may have to hand build scripts are actually present there, right? Okay, so moving on to the actual implementation. Okay, so this is more of the flow or block diagram of the CI/CD setup that we came up with using Bitrise. So there are two clouds here. So this is the in-house setup that we tried to bring in, but it failed, and I told the reasons why it failed. So this is right now not there, and this is the Bitrise cloud that we have built from scratch, and we have been using it successfully and with ease, right? So one of the biggest things that we required is, unlike a lot of other teams, our source code is internal. It's not hosted on GitHub or bitbucket.org. So we definitely required something which can connect and get our code. So the options were go for a VPC, bring this entire cloud inside the network, which was tons of work, and we wouldn't have been able to achieve it in the time that was required. So when we started exploring Bitrise, we saw that they had the concept of a step of VPN, where you can have a VPN step and connect to internally, get the source, do the build, terminate the VPN connection, right? That was a big plus point for us for choosing Bitrise, because it worked seamlessly for us, right? Another important thing is Bitrise does use Mac Stadium to provide the underlying Mac OS infrastructure, which enabled us to use Fastlane. It's a beautiful tool, does everything for you. Very easy setup. My colleague Nitish will go through a detailed demo on kind of how to use it, right? And again, we are able to run the APM automation scripts in a headless way. Both Android and iOS emulators are supported, so we have that too. And on top of that, the usual integrations like integrating the build phases to Slack and email. We also have a Nexus, so integrating that also is working. We have Nexus provides a internal NPM. We also have an integration with that to host our internal and private HOCs and libraries. So all these integrations, right, are working amazingly well with the Bitrise setup. And all these things we are doing at a very, very economic way. Okay, it's like good quality, but at a best price. Regarding Fastlane, in this diagram, you can already see that we let Fastlane manage our entire distribution, be it sandbox or the production. So we kind of, I'll show it in the next slide. We kind of have slotted out the build pipelines and the corresponding Fastlane lane to run for each of these scenarios where it needs to either go to Play Console or Test Flight, or if it's a release distribution, it can actually directly go to Google Play or iOS App Store, right? while discussing, I already also said that source control and how you manage code check-ins, releases, tags, and PRs, right, is also a big component on how your CI/CD and as a whole the DevOps will be a success or not. So you have to have a agreed upon way to kind of do the entire release, be it the feature fixes, be it the baselining, be it the tagging, everything. So we came up with this approach. So if you see in this particular approach, we have two baseline branches, which is one is develop and another one is master. So develop is baseline for anything like feature or bug fix, and master is baseline for all kinds of release processes. So one can get confused that why is release in between. So this is more like a mutable tag where if there comes a scenario where we have to do an emergency fix and we are not being able to use either develop or master, we can actually the release branch, right? And also on the bottom part of the screen, you can see that each of these branches are correlated to a particular Bitrise pipeline, which again runs a particular fast lane. So like for all feature and bug fixes, we do the ad hoc build. I mean, if you are aware of iOS ad hoc builds, you will know what ad hoc here means. If we are doing develop or intermediate branches like release, we do generally internal or beta builds. Internal is like here the internal track of Play Console, right? And the final production build actually comes from the tag. So once everything is done, once our entire CI/CD is complete, there is a tag that is created, which results in the release build, which actually pushes the APK and the IPA to the Google Play or the iOS App Store. Okay, so without further delay, I will hand it over to Nitish to actually show you a live demo on how we are using this and how it has brought us a lot of comfort in actually implementing the CI/CD. Karishma, can you make Nitish the presenter?
Yeah, I made him the presenter now.
Indranil, can we have a question like before we present?
Sure, can you go ahead, please?
Yeah, so I just wanted to know, like I'm a bit new to Bitrise, but we do have used like our in-house CI/CD, I mean, setup using Jenkins. So is it like if you have an existing setup using Jenkins in your organization, I just wanted to know how easy it is to migrate to Bitrise, and is there a hybrid kind of approach feasible where you can have your existing stuff as it is and maybe add new things in Bitrise as needed? Just wanted to get more clarity on it because I'm new.
Yeah.
So the idea
Sure.
behind both of these CI systems are basically the same. So in Jenkins also you might have pipelines, and the same thing translates to Bitrise as workflows. So your Jenkins pipeline might have particular steps that do some kind of thing, and then the same thing you can translate to steps in Bitrise also.
So functionality wise, it's as similar as Jenkins. So it's
Yes.
like
Yes.
or like either you use this or you move to that.
Correct.
Okay, I got it. Thanks.
Yeah.
So it gives you out of the box Mac support. So that means your builds, if you are doing cross-platform, your builds are actually happening on Mac. So that means you can actually run the Xcode builds in an automated way. And on top of that, another interesting thing which Nitish will show in the demo is the UI configuration. It's like in Jenkins, you still have to do a lot of scripting. I mean, you have to write the pipeline file and all that. If you are not a big fan of that, then Bitrise actually provides you a UI where you can drag steps and put it into your pipeline, right? And the entire configuration is very, very easy and very intuitive. So that's one of the big points of Bitrise. Right. Okay. Over to you, Nitish.
Yeah, thanks.
So
Thanks.
any other questions, please post them in the comment section. We'll take them in the end. Yep. Let's just move to the demo then. Thank you guys for attending today. So before we start the demo, I'll just quickly give an intro about the app. So basically, we have developed No Brownie Points for Guessing, a to-do app using React Native, which supports CRUD operations like add to do, delete to do, things like that. So we as an organization have chosen React Native, so we felt comfortable because it's cross-platform and we can develop both Android and iOS in that. So we just quickly put up something there, and our backend is hosted in is a Node backend. It's hosted in Heroku. For those who don't know what Heroku is, it's a cloud PaaS. We have used it to deploy our backend. So yeah, and the DB is MongoDB. So we just chosen a free Dino and then a Node.js build pack, and then all the code is hosted in GitHub and then deployed directly to Heroku. So let's just go ahead to Bitrise. So before we begin, as Indra told, Bitrise as a PaaS allows a 14-day free trial for people. You can choose both the single developer or even an organization for a trial. So we do recommend you guys create a free account and try it out. It's pretty cool, and it's very intuitive also. So for today's demo, we have just gone ahead and created a new account with a 14-day trial, and we'll just go ahead and start the first app. So we're just adding a new app with the created account. You can see Bitrise is supporting lots of source control things like GitHub, Bitbucket, GitLab, and I will also talk about how private and non private repos that are hosted can be brought into here. Like Indranil has mentioned, we can use we can write a script to connect to our VPN and then directly link with our private repos. But yeah, for today's demo, we are just using GitHub because it has very good integration with GitHub, even with private repos in GitHub. So the thing is, if you create a Bitrise account that is linked with GitHub, it will automatically detect all your repos here. You can see it has detected 2 of my repos. It's as simple as clicking the repo, and if you have admin rights to your repo, you can enable GitHub, enable Bitbucket, Bitrise to automatically add the SSH key pair. If you don't have the admin rights, you can choose the add on SSH key option here, and then you can do that manually also. But with GitHub, you have the integration setups here, so you can just choose the automatic option here. You can later, so you can choose the store the private key if you want from here. Next, you select the branch, which is typically going to be master, but this step will not affect the flow much. It's just a demo branch, so we'll just give it as master. And once all the setup is done, Bitrise will validate whether it is able to access the repo. So what it'll do is it'll try to clone the repo first, and then see if it can access its file, and then run some small tests. We'll just let that validate quickly. Once that's done, you can click proceed anyway here because it was not configured. The React Native project is not configured yet. Yeah, but you can see it has already detected that we're using both Fastlane and React Native just with the files in the file structure and the npm package.json file and the Android and iOS projects. So since we are going to be using Fastlane, I will be choosing Fastlane here, but do note that Bitrise as a platform supports separate integrations for Android, iOS, and even other frameworks like Flutter. Let's quickly set it up. and then you can also choose the stack on which you can deploy. So right now, since we are going to be using both Android and iOS, we have chosen the macOS Mojave stack. I think there's also support for Catalina now. Yeah. Can skip adding the app icon now. And like I said again, since it's GitHub, you also have the option to register the webhook automatically. If you don't have the admin rights, or if it's a private repo and you need a VPN to connect to, you can skip this step. I will show you later how to register this webhook manually. So once all the setup is done, Bitrise will automatically trigger the first build for you. At this point of time, it will obviously fail because there are more amount of configuration with respect to the workflows that needs to be done. But anyway, let's just let it run. So once you have created the app, what you can do is you can access the workflow editor tab for the particular app by logging into your account. What the workflow editor does is it enables you to configure steps like these. So whatever you see here on your left hand side, so all these are different steps. Each step is a unit of action that a workflow can do. We'll have a look at some of the steps available later. For example, each cloning of repo needs the SSH keys, right? If you're using the SSH URL, so this step does that. Second step does the actual cloning of the repo using the SSH. You can see some of the output variables for that step here. So these are all output variables that you can use in other steps that follow. And the script step is probably the most important step and the most powerful step that you can use. I will also show some use cases of the script step later. And for this demo, we will be focusing on using Fastlane for all automation with regards to the release and deployment of the apps to the Play Store and App Store. So what we can do with the Fastlane step is we can configure the lanes in the particular app code itself. For example, you will do all the Fastlane related setup in your actual repo, the code repo. And what Bitrise will do is it will take the lane that is specified here. It can be ad hoc, or it can be beta, or it can be internal, or it can be any custom lane that you want. And based on the value that you provide here, it will automatically trigger that particular lane in your code. And the final step is the deploy to Bitrise step. So this step is basically like used for archiving your app artifacts or build logs or your test results or whatever you want to be able to be accessed by other people using the links provided here. So now to add a step, what you can do is you can click on the plus icon here and it will open this window on the right. Here you can search for new steps. It's grouped into categories of test, deploy, notification, utility. Utility is where you might see steps like the script step and the npm command, especially considering a React Native project. The npm command steps will be very useful in installing the dependencies or running the tests or check style, check type, things like that. So there's a command that we will see more in the demo. There are also other specific Android and iOS related steps like bringing up the emulators or the AVD managers or the SDK installers, things like that. If you go on the top, you can see there's the test steps. So these again are steps related more specific to the platform. You can see Xcode test for iOS. You will also see a step for running JUnit tests in Android or even App Center tests. The other kind of steps we have is the deploy and the notification. So deploy, like I told, is for sending the artifacts and whatever you need to archive to the public using links that they can use to download. You can also directly deploy to Google Play and App Store Connect using this. Since we're using Fastlane, it abstract all these steps for us. But in case if you're not using Fastlane, you can also use these individual steps here. Yeah, deploy to iTunes Connect. And finally, in the notification kind of steps, you can see you can integrate with your Slack channels. All you need is a webhook to integrate with the Slack channel. You can also send mails using MailChimp. if you have account or even send SMSs using Twilio here. So let me just quickly go ahead and add, let me just skip through this. Yeah. Let me just quickly go ahead and add the NPM step here. So once you've added the step, this is how it will look like. On the, you can click on the left, you can click and hold on that step and drag and drop it in any place you want. So the ordering in which you place the step is very important. So because this determines in which flow the steps must execute. So it's like from top to bottom, right? So you can just press and hold and drag and drop them anywhere in place you want. You can also choose which version of the step that you want to use. So this means you will get all the minor and patch updates, and this means you will get only the patch updates. And you also see a toggle for showing run if the previous step failed. So what that means is there might be some cases where in your workflow you want a step to execute no matter whether the previous step failed or not. So there might be some cases like that. So this toggle enables that. So if you check this toggle, what will happen is even if the previous step failed, this step will still run. And in Bitrise, each step has something called as input variables and output variables. So input variables are what you might be providing as inputs when you use that particular command in the CLI. For example, if I'm using npm to run some command in the CLI, for example npm install, so I might give some flags or I might give some directories. For example, if I need to install a package as a global dependency, I will give the -g, right, -g flag. So all those kind of uh, input to the command you can give here. You can see for the git repo there are a separate set of input variables. For example, the repository URL. For npm, it's the working directory in which you want to run the command. So each of these variables, you can either type the actual value of the variables itself here. For example, I can type out the directory name itself directly, or I can also use something called as the variables in Bitrise. So in Bitrise, there are different kinds of variables like provided by the Bitrise itself or provided by application variables and secrets, which I will explain later. Or there are other variables that can be used as output from the other step. For example, you can in your command prompt, you can export environment variables, right? So like that, the steps can also export other output variables. We can use those also in other steps. Or you can also manually export variables using the script step. Since it's a Mac OS system, right, you can export variables. So these are examples of some of the output variables from git clone step. This is the actual command. So in this case, it might be install or check type or check style or test or whatever you wish. So what this step will do is once you type the command here, it will check your package.json for that particular script, particular key in the JSON, and it will execute the corresponding script. Once you're done with all the changes, you can just click the save button here. So let's just quickly take a look at the secret and environment variables. So secrets are part and parcel of any CA platform, right? So basically, they are private pieces of info which may be used to identify or authorize something like API keys or some secure config that you need to use that should not be shown to the public. So the problem with most of these CA systems are logs, right? So anyone who has access to your branch, anyone who has a pull request access or a push access to your repo can easily write a simple script to console log these kind of secrets that you don't want the public to see. So that is where secrets and InVivars come in any CS system essentially. So what secrets does is you can easily it helps us to easily redact private information that is not shown, that should not be shown in any kind of logs. So when you enter a variable as a secret, it will be redacted in the logs automatically. So you can see some of the secrets that we have set up for Fastlane. I will explain later on what these variables are. But yeah, these are all secret variables related to Fastlane. To add a variable, you can just click the add new button there and give a key and a value. The value can be anything, but the important thing is it will be hidden from the logs. So what the replace variables in inputs toggle does here is it'll copy the value in the particular step, but we might not use this very often since it's a secret. Yeah, and the other toggle here is expose for pull requests. So what Bitrise as a platform does is it provides us an additional layer on top of the secrets, saying that only some of the secrets can be accessed even by PRs. So when you toggle when you toggle this checkbox here, will these secrets even be allowed in PR? If you don't toggle this, even if a PR is made and this build is triggered, you will not be able to see those secrets. So it's an additional level of security here. One thing you might notice is all the values that that we have entered here are shown are masked. So in case you want to see what the values are, you can press the eye icon here and see it. But there might be cases where such kind of workflow, even when you have given the access to people who can edit the workflows, there might be very sensitive information that you don't want everyone in your organization to see. So even though they have the access to edit the workflows, those secrets are not really necessary for them to be known. So when you have such kind of scenario, you can go ahead and lock the values also. So you can see there is a lock sign here. So what that does is it will prevent the people from seeing the actual value of the secrets. So in case if you have some top secret value here, you can just create a new secret here, save it. After you save it, you can click on the edit. You can click on the edit option here, and then you can make it protected. So once you make it protected, it will be impossible for anyone to check out the value, even by pressing this eye icon here. But you can still continue to edit the values in case if you have the permissions. Yeah. Next, let's go to environment variables. So the only difference between secrets and environment variables is like environment variables are uh, more are kind of more open, and they're basically like small config values that are not really very much of a secret. For example, this might be used to decide whether you need to build the iOS IPA or build the Android APK, or in case if you want to control the workflow of some other use cases, you can use the environment variables to do so. So this is not for any private information, and the process is very similar. You can click on the add new button here, give a key and a value. Now let's move on to workflows. So so what you see here is a collection of steps, and that is basically a workflow. A workflow is just a sequence of ordered steps. So the order, like I told, defines which step is executed first. You can see a particular project can have multiple workflows, and the reason for that is we can have each workflow decide which a kind of order of sequence of steps to run, and those order of sequence of steps can be decided on how we are triggering the individual Bitrise build. So you might want, for example, a workflow to upload to either test flight or play console, that is for internal testing, or you can also have a workflow to upload directly to Play Store or App Store, like a direct release. Or you can also have ad hoc workflows that build ad hoc builds so that you can give them to your testers manually so that they can test it in their own particular devices, things like that. And the interesting thing about workflows here is a workflow cannot just compose steps, it can also compose other workflows. So let me show an example of that quickly. So let me just choose the beta workflow here. So if you see here on we have a common start workflow here. So this is a separate workflow that is not beta workflow. So it's a separate workflow, and you can compose it using this add workflow before or add workflow offer button. So the common start is a separate workflow, and what the beta workflow does is it says that when some build is triggering the beta workflow, first run the common start workflow, then run these particular two commands, and then run the next set of workflows. So right now you can see that beta workflow is a composition of common start workflow, a collection of 2 steps and another workflow. So this is an example of a sample workflow that we at our organization are using. So you can see in our common and common start workflows, there are a set of common functionalities that might be used among all the other workflows. So we have beta, release, ad hoc, right? So all of these workflows will have a common step of connecting to SSH, cloning the repo, running the npm tests, installing the dependencies, installing Cocoa Pods, all such kinds of things. And in the common end, we will have things like Appium tests, and then deploying those artifacts, things like that, uploading to Nexus, things like that. So now let's uh, go through the common start steps individually. So the npm install is for installing dependencies. Check type is for the linting, static code analysis and linting. And then npm test is to run the actual npm test. So since you're using React Native, we are using Jest to write UI unit tests. You can trigger those using this npm test step. And something that we are adding on top of that is the API automation. So for that, we are using JMeter. So Apache JMeter is an open source tool for functional and performance testing, as you might know. So Bitrise as a platform does not provide JMeter by default. So this is where the power of the script step comes in. So what this is basically just a script step. So what the script step does is you can in the script content you can type any bash script that you want to run. So in this case, what we're doing is we're just trying to download the JMeter zip, the executable, unzip it, and then run the particular script. So you can see we are just downloading the binaries for the JMeter, just unzipping it, and then starting the particular JMX script step. So this particular JMX script file is there in the code. So if we can quickly go to our Git repo, right, under the test folder, we have the API automation, and this is where the JMeter script lies. So this JMeter script can be written in the actual JMeter plugin locally, and you can just export the script into the code for any kind of automation testing for the API that you want to do. So this is just a simple script for testing all the endpoints that we have. Just quickly put up. So what this line will do is it will just run that particular JMeter script in the command line itself, and then export the results to a particular CSV file. So once we need to see the results, right? So in order to do that, we will just copy that to the deploy directory, and then so that the deploy step in the common end workflow will take it up and then archive it. And Cocoa Pods install is something that React Native itself uses. So it's a package management tool for iOS. So React Native itself uses it to load the actual React Native framework code locally into the current project. So this is like a required step if you're using React Native as the framework here. And Carthage we are using for the Appium test for iOS. It's again another different kind of package manager, but yeah, Appium requires it, so we're installing that also. Let's quickly look at the beta steps. So the beta step is where the actual building of the app happens. So what by segregating these steps into individual workflows, what we can do is, in case if the top workflow fails, we can prevent this step from being run. So if you notice in our common start workflow, we have all the basic level tests like UI unit tests and even the app API test, API automation test. So in case either of those fails, we can prevent the app from even just building. It's just waste of resource, right? So we can just prevent the app from building. So that's why it's segregated like this. With respect to the particular Fastlane steps, before we go into that, I'll just give a small intro about what Fastlane is. So Fastlane is a tool that truly embraces the ideology of automating everything. So using Fastlane, you can automate every aspect of a release workflow, right from app deployment and distribution to taking screenshots, generating metadata, even code signing in iOS, which is probably a big headache, and even uploading builds to the app in Play Store. So how Fastlane achieve this is using a concept called lanes. So Fastlane is written in Ruby, so there is the very small hiccup there is like Fastlane needs Mac OS to run. So without a Mac system, you will not be able to even test Fastlane. So that is one disadvantage there. But if you have a Mac system, you can easily quickly set up Fastlane in your project using Fastlane init. It's just as simple as running Fastlane init from any of your project root directories, and it will just it's a very interactive process. It will just take you through each step line by line. You just have to respond to those steps there. So with that being said, since it's written in Ruby, so the lanes are essentially equivalent to what are methods in Ruby. So when you configure a lane, what you do is in a lane you again write separate steps. For example, a step to download the certificates for iOS, and then a step to actually build the app, and then a step to actually upload the app. So all these steps are put in together into a single lane in Fastlane, and where Bitrise comes in is it can help you trigger that lane from the code. If you remember, I mentioned about some Fastlane environment variables.
Nitish, can you show a sample Fastlane for the test flight? Because there are questions on how to do the test flight integration.
Okay, sure. Let me quickly put that up. So this is a sample.
Can you increase the size? Is it possible to increase the size?
Yes. Is this fine?
Yeah.
Okay. So like I told, each lane is like a small method which can have individual steps. So what Fastlane helps in achieving this is, like, you can write Fastlane plugins. So each plugin can be a step here. So all these are plugins that you see here. We have a plugin for code signing. So what this plugin might do is it will download all your iOS certificates and provisioning profiles based on the type here and the app identifier. This step is for building the app. So you just specify the workspace, the scheme, and which configuration. So all these are done in your Xcode project itself. And from there, you can just once the configuration is done in your Xcode project, you can just use the build app step here to trigger the build. So what the output of this step will be the actual IPA. This is an ad hoc, but in terms of pushing to test flight, in terms of pushing to test flight, all you need to do is after building the app, you can just use the plugin upload to test flight or upload to app store. So upload to test flight will stop at uploading the build to test flight, but upload to app store will also create the release for you also directly. So all these are very high level abstractions. So all you need to do is just call this plugin. You don't have to do anything more. You just have to install Fastlane, install those plugins, and then just call those plugins.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah. Yeah, so that being said, that all those are for running in your local machine. So when you need to translate this to CI, you need to set up these environment variables so that Fastlane knows that this particular user and this particular user is authorized to authorize and authenticated to upload to that particular organization's profile. So all those things are configured using the environment variable set here. So you can have the Fastlane user, the Fastlane password, the match password, Fastlane session, things like that. So once all that configuration is done, with respect to Bitrise, it's as simple as adding the Fastlane step and then mentioning which lane to trigger. So if you notice, so in the code, we have lanes like release and beta. So these are the identifiers that you need to use in the bitrise actually. So when I type beta here, what bitrise will do is it will look through my fast file and look for the beta lane, and it'll just execute that lane. It's as simple as that. So the onus is more on the configuration than like actually typing scripts to do the stuff. With respect to the common end steps, this is where we run our Appium E2E tests. So basically we can run either Android or iOS for both. With respect to Android, you need the emulator set up the appropriate SDKs in which you want to test the actual app. So this SDK update step helps us in doing that. You can mention which SDK build tools you want, which platform versions you want to install, and then you can start up a particular emulator, wait for it to boot, and then run those particular tests. Same process for the iOS simulator. Again, for running Appium test, you need to install Appium, which is not there by default in Bitrise. So you just open up a script step and then do npm install Appium here. Install Appium. After Appium is installed, you can use another npm step to directly trigger the you can use the npm step to directly trigger the Appium related deps. So these deps are again there in our code. And then as usual, you can use the again same package.json to configure what script to run for iOS and what scripts to run for Android test. So if you quickly go back to our code, you can quickly show a sample of our UI automation test. So this is again written in JS using jest, and we use something called WDIO drivers. All these are just normal JS code. So what we can do with this is Appium, as you know, is a black box testing tool, right? So you can write test scripts that that treat our app as a black box and then test it. So these tests are more aimed at that. And the interesting thing is you can also take screenshots from here. For example, you can see a save screenshot step here, right, on line 72. So what this will do is this will save the screenshot in the CI machine, and you can again archive it using the deploy step. So there's an example of some of our UI tests. And finally, once all this is successfully done, you can deploy the artifacts that you are generated using the build. For example, the IPA or the APK or some of the logs of these tests, for example, using the deploy step. So the deploy steps can be used to either send a mail or send a Slack message even. By default, Bitrise provides its own deploy steps. So what this deploy step will do is it will trigger a mail to the email that is registered in this account, and also to all of your team members that you're registered if you're part of the organization plan. So that is something by default Bitrise does in the deploy step. You can also specify which directory to deploy the contents from. So that's the Bitrise deploy directory there. And finally, if you want to integrate to other messaging and communication tools like, for example, Slack or Twilio, you can also use that step here. In this case, we're just using a Slack. So the Slack URL is basically the webhook. It's set up in the secrets there. And you can also configure what the message should and which channel we should send it to. So all those are input variables to the Slack step in particular. So this is just a basic configuration of a sample Slack message. I will be showing how the Slack message looks during the later part of this demo. So let's just quickly skip through these. So that's an example of a sample workflow that we are using right now in our organization, and which it is pretty comprehensive. That's what we feel. Another interesting thing that Bitrise provides is you can also edit these configuration if you're not really particularly excited about this UI dragging, dropping, things like that. You can also edit these steps directly in YAML. So if you're more used to YAML kind of configurations, you can also directly use YAML to edit these workflows. Of course, there is a learning curve to the actual identifiers used here, but yeah, it's pretty straightforward. You can see the workflows mentioned here and the individual steps in those workflows, and you can also see some other some other interesting things like run if. So what this means is only if this particular variable is true, returns to true, this step will run. So there are additional kind of configurations that you can do that is not part of the UI building of the workflow, right? So you can use YAML to configure such kind of run if scenarios.
Nitish, did we show the API testing also, the full CI/CD that we configured?
Yep, it's part of the common start flow. I did show it, yeah.
Yeah.
Just going through the YAML file. You can see also the app environment variables are also listed here. So what this YAML file makes it easier is, suppose if you're part of an organization and you are in charge of deploying, creating a particular workflow or a project for a new app, right? So what you can do is you can just copy this YAML file and paste it in a new project in Bitrise, and it will automatically import those steps here, and you can just use that as a base and then work from there. So that's an advantage of using this YAML config here. So the other two tabs that we have left here is the stack and the triggers. So the stack is basically, indicating what the actual hardware that is going to be used for your Bitrise build. So since we want both iOS and Android, so we have chosen Mac, which which supports both iOS and Android. You can see the list of available options. You can also use Docker if you want, or just Linux if you want. And the other added layer is you can also configure stacks for individual workflows. So this is the default stack. You can also configure stacks for the individual workflows here, particular workflows. So there's also that added layer of config. Next comes the triggers. So the triggers are responsible for indicating which workflow to run when something happens in your code repo. So if you remember, when I started, Bitrise automatically did something called as registering a webhook. So this webhook is responsible for maintaining the connection between your actual code repo and Bitrise itself. So what this webhook will do is, once there is, for example, some configured event like a PR being made or something being pushed to master or some branch or a PR being merged. So those are all kind of events that the webhook can listen to. So when that particular event is triggered, the webhook will send an API call to this actual Bitrise project here, and then the Bitrise project will go through what kind of uh, event was made, whether it is a merge or a PR being created or some comment being added. Based on that, it will decide which workflow to run. So that's why the triggers come in. And like I said, if you didn't have the admin privileges to add the webhook automatically, you can come into this section here and then set it up manually. So once you click on the setup manually, you will get a webhook link that you can copy and then go to your particular Git repo, go to its settings, and then you can configure it from there in the webhooks tab. So if you see in the webhooks tab, you can paste that. You can see Bitrise is automatically created for me, but in case if you weren't able to, you can just click on this add webhook button here and then paste the URL here. So once that is done, you will be given the option to uh, kind of configure which events to listen to. So basically there can be many types of events, but currently we are mainly focusing on any kind of push events. So the push events mostly cover most of the activities that that you might see in any development environment. So basically all the work that we do is based on pushes, right? So even if you merge a PR to some branch, it's also technically still a push to that branch. You're pushing a merge commit to that branch. So technically if you just push, that is enough to listen to all the events in the branch. But yeah, you have the option to listen to every which individual event that you want. So it gives more granular control there. So once you're done with choosing which events you want to listen to, you can switch back to the Bitrise tab and then go to the triggers tab here. So in the triggers tab, you can see that there are three sections for push, pull request, and tag. So based on the event that you have registered your webhook for, you can configure the particular section here. since we have registered for push, you can see there are 3 different kinds of triggers. So this goes back to the source control thing that Indranil was talking about. So this is something that we as an organization have decided to follow through, and it works pretty well. Uh, Noting that we have a lot of features that we are currently developing, and since all our apps are in the initial phases, there are like probably 3 or 4 or even 5 number of developers working on probably like 4 or 5 features at the same time. So all of those we are factoring in all such kind of velocity that the team is working on, and then created this trigger map. So you can see our trigger maps is split into 3 things. So one is for each push to develop, we trigger the internal workflow, which is basically like creating a ad hoc build that you can give to your testers in-house. And then in the master, when a push is made to master branch, it means that you have something that is release ready, so that is ready to face the public in production. So in that case, we are following the beta workflow, which pushes to test flight and play console. And the release star is basically uh, like a middle ground between the master and develop. Yep. So to add a trigger, you can just click on the add trigger button here and specify which branch you want to listen to, and then on the right you choose which workflow you want to execute. Same process for pull requests and tags. Again, you'll see similar things there. So with that being said, I will kind of explain the trigger map that we are using at our organization. So like Indranil explained, we are using the develop, release, master strategy. So develop is like the cutting edge. At any point of time, we develop will have the most latest code and some amount of QA done on it, so that we can ensure that we might not be able to ensure that it's 100% bug free, but it's to the most possible extent bug free. That's where develop is. And once you are comfortable enough to say that develop the features in develop are fully developed, and then we have showed it to the PM and he has approved it. So once we have got the go ahead from everyone in the organization, we can go ahead and create a release. So we just create a branch from develop, a release branch from develop, and then we take it to merge. We just merge it with master, indicating that it's ready for release, ready for production. So this is our source control workflow here. So if you see on the middle, you can see we have Bitrise and Fastlane. So Bitrise and Fastlane are responsible for actually doing the deployment with respect to building the apps and then deciding when to push to App Store and when to push to test flight. So you can see in Bitrise, you have particular workflows designed for each of these branches: develop, release, master, tag, and each workflow will correspond to a particular lane in the first file. So you can see we try to name them similar. So if you have a Bitrise workflow named internal, the fast lane will also be named internal. Yeah. So we have configured it in such a way
I
that
think this is self-explanatory. Uh,
yep.
so the point is that we did plan a lot, and came to a sweet spot where now we have reached a stage where developers are more concerned about doing the features and fixing the bug rather than wasting time on how to make sure that their things reach to the beta or production, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So let's move on to the next item here.
Okay. Yeah. So we have probably come to the end of the actual demo. So right now I'm just showing you some of the logs of the builds that we are running. So you can see the logs for the check types, the test steps, this the just step coverage, and then you can also see the output of the Fastlane supply, Fastlane match steps. So this is where the actual upload to Play Store and App Store happens. And then you can see this is the output of the deploy step in Bitrise. So you can see the actual IPA and the APK files here. You can also see the sample API automation testing JMeter results here. So this is the kind of the XML that the JMeter outputs. So this is the public facing download page where you can share this link for people to download the APK and IPA. So this is the output of the actual upload step. You can see the particular APK is uploaded directly from Bitrace using Fastlane. This is an example of the Slack message that we configured. So you can see from here also you can directly go to the Bitrace pages. This is a sample mail. And the other interesting thing that we can do is using the script steps, right? So with the script step, you can do a lot of things. So we kind of use it for connecting to VPN. So with respect to our organization, we are using something called an Open Connect client. So Open Connect is an open source client. So what you can do is you can just use the script step to kind of install Open Client and connect to your particular VPN. After you're connected to the VPN, you will be able to clone the repo. So without this VPN, all internal repos will not have access directly, right? So we are using the script step to overcome that step, that particular hurdle. And this is a small script, Python. You can also execute Python scripts. It's a Mac environment, right? So Python is there by default. So you can just write a small Python script to send mails, automatic mails based on when the build is done. So all kinds of customization, such customization can be done using Bitrace steps.
Yeah,
So
it's extremely flexible. Yeah.
with respect to everything that we have shown here, there is one thing that we are still exploring a little bit more, that is the security testing aspect. So with respect to Bitrace as a platform supporting security testing, there are few steps for using platforms like Codified Security or IBM's AppScan Cloud. So these steps mainly will be like uploading the generated APK or IPA into those particular platforms and then continuing there. But then, like I told, you can also use JMeter for some minimal amount of security and performance testing like pen tests, XSS, fuzzing, etc. But there's also something other interesting in the space. There's something that's being developed called MobSF. So this is like a security framework for both Android, iOS, and Windows for simple pen testing, malware analysis, and security assessment framework. So what this does is you can there's another company called Soluto. So what they have done is they have kind of CI this entire thing. So they have Dockerized this entire framework so that that particular Docker image, now we can run it on Bitrace. So all these are open source repos. You can have a look at them. We'll share the links later. Yeah. So what this MobSF CI step will do is it will generate the reports in JSON, and you can consume them in the web UI, or you can directly use something called OWASP Glue. So what OWASP Glue does is it can pass through the JSON and then either pass or fail your step. So by doing this, what you can do is we can ensure that as part of our day-to-day builds, we are also doing security testing so that we are catching the security and performance flaws also along with our normal UI and API tests. Yeah, so that pretty much concludes our demo for today. If we quickly go back to the slides, we have a set of reference links here which we'll be sharing. So there's this particular blog that I found really interesting with regards to the security testing aspect. You can read through it. It's pretty comprehensive. I think now we can open for some QA.